Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 5. In my last video, I was just going over all the scriptures that talk about the sun and the moon becoming dark on the day of the Lord. And when I was reading from Matthew 24, I didn't read the next scripture, which was this one right here, verse 31, where it says, "And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other." So this is talking about the rapture. It's not talking about the second coming. And as I showed you, it's the same thing that's being talked about in Zechariah 12. Over here where it says, "I will pour out upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplications, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn." And then of course in Zechariah 12, that's where it talks about Israel or Jerusalem becoming a cup of trembling when Israel is surrounded. This is the same thing that's talked about in Luke. Over here in Luke 21, in verse 20, it says, "And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled." So it's when Israel is compassed with armies that those who are in Judea are to flee to the mountains. So if you go back to where it says flee to the mountains, you'll see that's also when the abomination of desolation takes place, as is talked about here in Matthew 13. And it says, "But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains, and let him that is on the housetop not go down." That would be the rapture, because how can you not come down from the housetop into his house, neither enter therein to take anything out of his house? "And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, for in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time, neither shall be." And then if you go back to where it talked about fleeing to the mountains, you'll see that it's the same thing that's being talked about in Zechariah 14. So again, this is the same day. It's the day of the Lord. It's the same thing as the rapture. The rapture and the day of the Lord are the second coming. And in Zechariah 14:1 it says, "Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle." This is what Nathan saw in his vision. "And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. And then shall the Lord go forth." This is Jesus, the capstone, the true capstone, the true cornerstone, being placed on the temple. And I believe the Mount of Olives represents the temple that's talked about in Zechariah 4. Of course, Zechariah wrote both Zechariah 4 and Zechariah 14, so it makes sense that he would be talking about the same thing. but I'll go ahead and read it from verse 3. It says, "Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle, and his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave," this is an important word, "in the midst thereof, toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Yea, ye shall flee like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee." This would be the rapture. "And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord." This is a day that no one else knows. Only the Lord, only Yahweh knows this day. Just like Jesus said that only the Father knows what day it will be. "But it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night, but it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day that living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be." And if you look at the word summer over here in the Hebrew, you'll see that it means summer fruit, and you see that it's talking about the harvest. So there's the summer harvest, when the summer fruit is gathered, which I want to talk a little bit more about. And then there's also the winter harvest, which would be in the southern hemisphere. While the northern hemisphere is having the summer harvest, the southern hemisphere is having the autumn harvest or the winter harvest. And so it'll be during summer and winter, it's saying here. And then another interesting thing that it mentions further down, well, actually it's interesting right here that it mentions the wine presses, but it also mentions the Feast of Tabernacles. Right here when you get to verse 18, it says, "And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And this shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." So it's mentioning the Feast of Tabernacles as well as the summer and winter harvest. And like I had said when we're looking at Sky Live, that it will be on September 16th would be the Feast of Tabernacles or Sukkot according to the Torah calendar, but according to the Hillel calendar, that's not going to be until about October 17th. The 16th or the 17th will be the beginning of Sukkot, and it will last until about the 23rd of October. So it could be that things might not transpire until the Feast of Tabernacles according to the Hillel calendar, but then again it could be that God may be using the Torah calendar. We don't know for sure, but the Revelation 12 sign does not fully come to pass until about October 3rd. That's when all the signs would be in place for that. So I'm not sure if God would be using the Torah calendar or the Hillel calendar. But in any case, I think we should definitely be on high alert during the Feast of Sukkot that's coming up September 16th, and then again on the 17th of October would be the Feast of Sukkot according to the Hillel calendar. So, I mean, it could be any day, just like it says in Zechariah. It's a day that's known only to the Lord, only to Yahweh, so we don't know the day or the hour. We do see all the signs coming into alignment, coming into in place for it to transpire. There's other signs in the heavens that I wanted to talk about, like the constellation Boötes, which I could go ahead and mention a few things about that since I have a little bit of time left. But the alpha star in the constellation Boötes would be the star Arcturus. And the word Arcturus actually means gathering. If you look at the word, you'll see that it's mentioned in the book of Job, where it's talking about God, and it's saying, which maketh Arcturus, Orion, Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. And then in verse 38, 32, it says, canst thou bring forth the Mazareth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? And the brightest star in the constellation Boötes would be Arcturus, but it's also the constellation Ursa Major, and I'll show you that. It's over here. Over here you see the constellation Boötes, which looks like a shepherd, and he's actually holding a sickle in his hand. So he would represent Christ, because Christ is the shepherd, and he's coming to reap the harvest. And the alpha star in the knee of the constellation Boötes, in the knee of the shepherd, the brightest star is named Arcturus, but it also refers to Ursa Major, which would be the bear, which would be this constellation. And these are both deacon constellations for the constellation Virgo. And Arcturus actually means to gather. It comes from a word that means gather. And you see that here. It says to lend aid, come to help, hasten. And over here it says assemble. And over here it's saying to gather. It's the same word that's used in Joel 4. I'm sorry, that's actually Joel 3. I'm not sure why it says 4:11 there, but it's actually Joel 3:11 right here, where it says, assemble yourselves and come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about, thither cause thy mighty ones to come down. So you can see this word means to gather. Over here it's talking about the gathering of all the nations against Israel, where it says, behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So again, it's talking about all nations gathering against Israel. This is the day of the Lord. It's when the sun and the moon turn dark. It all happens at the same time. All these scriptures are talking about the same thing. And you see right here in verse 13, it's saying, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, and their wickedness, it's great. So it's talking about the wine press, which would be the wine harvest. It's talking about the sickle, the wheat harvest. And all of these things take place around this time, around the summer time, anytime from now up until the Feast of Sukkot, which is the ingathering, which is the harvest at the end of the year. So it could be any day. All the signs are there. We just need to keep watching. And I'm about out of time, so I just want to thank you for watching this video, and just encourage you to keep looking up, for our redemption draws nigh. And I may continue with more in another video. Thank you.